Harris's campaign also released this statement just before we went on the air, saying in part, Donald Trump took a break from taking a break to put on some pants and host a public meltdown. That's, end quote, a statement from the Kamala Harris campaign. Let's bring in Marc Caputo now, national political reporter for the Bulwark. Thanks so much, Marc, for being here. Well, at least he took questions. What did you make of that?
Well, it was a kind of a classic Donald Trump press conference. There were lies, there was exaggerations, there was truth, there were insults. I don't pity the reporters who have to try to compress, condense, and write a news story about that because there was so much. I mean, I guess the top line biggest news was he agreed to a debate finally that he had previously agreed to. But I think what you saw here, and you alluded to this, is Donald Trump needed to have this press conference.
Yeah.
The reason he had it is that you can tell he believes that this is starting to slip away from him, and he needed to get some headlines and occupy the center stage. And so that's what he did.
Yeah, well, a lot of the headlines were that I was struck by the fact that he repeatedly warned we're about to have a depression. We just played a soundbite akin to something we had in 1929. And he talked about the stock market crash on Monday. The stock market is up nearly 700 points today.
Yeah, I'm not a stock expert, but the problem with sort of pinning your campaign to the stock market is that it does stuff like that.
Yeah.
Also, the people that his campaign and that Republicans want his campaign to focus on are not the kind of people who obsess about the stock market. You know, in 2016, he won the race for president on a rather more precise message about the forgotten man and woman. He sort of forgot about them. So he's not really talking about inflation. He's not talking about immigration. He's not talking about Harris's record as consistently and as disciplinedly as he needs to be. And that gives Republicans who support him the willies.
Yeah.
And Democrats are, for now, sort of feeling their oats. They wouldn't have issued that statement you just read if they weren't feeling like, okay, we're still winning this, we can ridicule him.
Yeah, that's a really very pointed statement that does ridicule him. I want to get back to Trump. He did repeat, several falsehoods that he has been saying on the campaign trail and even at his own convention. He claimed he brought the biggest tax cuts in U.S. history. That is not true. He said no one was killed in the riot on January 6th. That is not true. 7 people died. He said Democrats allow abortion even after a baby is born. That is not true. Said the strategic oil reserve is empty and has never been lower. Both of those things are not true. What is he trying to accomplish? These are all easily provably false.
Well, I think the fallacy in your question is that he's trying to accomplish something. He's just saying whatever comes into his head, and he's so accustomed to saying these things. And whether they've been fact-checked once or 1,000 times, which they have somewhere in between that, he'll just continue to say it. This gets back to message discipline. There is a winning message. If you look at the polling, he wins on immigration. He wins on inflation. Those are top issues. But he doesn't dwell on them with enough specificity that gives enough of his supporters comfort.
Listen, he did land a very good point with the fact that he is standing there today taking questions. He did it last week at the NABJ, some really tough questions on that stage, and Harris is not. He was questioned, however, about why he is not out campaigning this week. Harris and Waltz and his own running mate are flying around the country. They're holding rallies and campaign events. Even some Republicans, Mark, have begun to question why Trump is not out there trying to win votes.
Well, I mean, he is out there winning votes. In the end, more people are going to watch, more voters are going to see Donald Trump on the newscasts tonight, such as this and on other networks, and read about him in newspapers than they would have had he had one of his rallies. Most networks don't cover his rallies live for some of the reasons you just outlined. He lies a lot. He rambles for 90 minutes. There's no concise messaging, so they don't wind up covering it. So it turns out it's better for him to get his message out, at least this week, doing this press conference, rather than doing one of these big rallies that ultimately get ignored unless he winds up sticking his foot in his mouth on a certain thing. And he did over the weekend when he attacked fellow Republican Brian Kemp, the popular governor of swing state Georgia, who's a Republican, and he attacked him for no reason.
Well, thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.